Hi, Dad.
Hi, Hannah.
Hi. So we're here today to talk about what's going on in Israel and Palestine. And 3 weeks ago, today on October 7th, Hamas entered Israel and killed 1,400 Israelis, took over 200 Israeli citizens hostage. And in response, Israel has retaliated in a brutal fashion, killing thousands of Palestinians. And on October 7th, you were away on a very busy speaking tour in Eastern Europe, and you did one radio interview on the subject, but we haven't yet addressed this on social media. So for many, this is long overdue, and want to acknowledge that, and we're here to talk about it today.
I'm glad to finally have the opportunity to be back home and to have a conversation with you about it, amongst many other conversations that I'll be having online, which we can talk about later.
Sure. So I wonder if we want to just begin acknowledging how difficult it is to talk about this, no matter where you stand, and I'll let you speak to that.
This is one of the issues that, first of all, is most close to my heart and has been for decades. And for a lot of people, it's like that. And it's almost impossible to speak about it without emotion. It doesn't matter which side you're on. It just brings us so much history, so much pain, and frankly, so much trauma that it's difficult for us to engage with the rational parts of our minds when our emotions are so overwhelming in the light of such devastating events. It's a very difficult conversation.
It is, and we're going to do our best today. We, want to remain regulated and rational and all those things, and also acknowledging that for both of us, this is emotional as well. It's been a difficult few weeks. Um, so why don't you go ahead and give us your comment, beginning with, what happened on October 7th, and then, of course, sharing, some of the history before that. But let's begin with October 7th.
Well, October 7th was, by any definition, an atrocity and a tragedy for those who suffered it. People being killed, civilians, non combatants being taken hostage, and for their relatives and the country people, their fellow Israelis and many people around the world. They could not have experienced it as anything other than an assault that was historically reminiscent of other assaults that Jews have experienced throughout history. And that's the light of which a lot of people experienced it and interpreted it. And that's totally understandable. And from that point of view, the pain, the fear, the rage, and even the desire for revenge are totally understandable
Mm.
on the emotional side. What is difficult to remember at times like this is that there is another side, that there's other people having their own experiences based on their own history, based on their own experience. And nobody expressed that better than the Israeli journalist Amir Haas, who for 30 years has been reporting from the West Bank. And Amira said in the aftermath of the October 7th events, and I'm going to quote from her article now. In a few days, she wrote, Israelis went through what Palestinians have experienced as a matter of routine for decades and are still experiencing military incursions, death, cruelty, slain children, bodies piled up on the road, siege, fear, anxiety over loved ones, captivity, and searing humiliation. And so history did not begin on October the 7th. And nothing I'm going to say here today or ever say will justify what happened on October the 7th because that's not justifiable. And I don't know anybody who says that it is. At the same time, if our intention is to move forward, to create some basis for peace, we have to be able to understand the experience of the other. And the experience of the other for the last 80 years, and this is simply historical fact, has been mass killings. Tens of thousands of Palestinians have been killed. Thousands of children have been killed. This is going back to 1947, 48. People have been expelled from their land. They've been occupied. Yes, there are 220 or so Israeli hostages for which one can only express regret and pray for their safety. Thousands of Palestinians are held hostage in Israeli jails and tortured, professionally tortured. And last year I was in the occupied territories working with women who had been tortured in Israeli jails. So, without going through the long history, I will only tell you that we have to ask ourselves what fed such hatred, such desire for revenge on the part of those people that broke out of Gaza. And Gaza has been called the largest concentration camp in the world by an Israeli sociologist, Baruch Kimmerling. And I can only stop here and say, I'm not going to go into the history now. I will do this in other forums. I did a long interview a couple of days ago that will be online soon. Uh, I'll be doing an online question answer period with the organization SAND, Spirituality and Non Duality next week sometime. But in the meanwhile, people do need to understand that horrible as those events are, and nothing I'm saying again, I repeat, justifies it. At the same time, it did not begin on October the 7th. And there is information that people owe it to themselves to discover is information from Israeli and Palestinian sources. May I mention some of them now?
Please.
Yeah. In terms of Israeli histories, begin with this book called The Birth of Israel Myths and Realities by Simha Flapan. Simha Flapan was a lifelong kibbutz member. He was a Zionist. He fought in the 48 war. He was the head of the Mapam Party's Arab Affairs branch. And long ago, he wrote this book where he pointed out that the things that many people believe about the birth of Israel was not the way it happened, that the 47-48 war was not the way it's presented in the official Israeli and pro Zionist histories. You can begin with Simha Flapan.
And we'll
You,
put the names of everything that we discuss in the description of the video.
I'm
For
sorry,
people.
say it again.
We'll put the names of everything that we
Oh,
discuss
oh,
in the
oh,
description of the video for
fair
people to
enough.
access.
Then there's the modern Israeli historian Ilan Pappé. He's got a book called A History of Modern Palestine. You could check that out. As a Palestinian source for Palestinian history, you could read Rashid Khalidi's The Hundred Years' War against 100 Years' War on Palestine, A History of Settler Colonialism. Wonderful book. Very objective and in no way anti-Jewish. You can read Ilan Pappé's The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine that describes what really happened in 1907, 1948. You can read the magnificent Norman Finkelstein's book, Gaza, An Inquest into Its Martyrdom, published in 2018. You can watch Norman Finkelstein's interviews with Chris Hedges in the last couple of weeks. You can watch Norman Finkelstein interview with Michaela Peterson just in the
Michaela
last couple
Peterson.
of days um, on YouTube. Again, a succinct, learned, very measured account of the history of Gaza, which, as I may have mentioned before, the Israeli sociologist Baruch Kimmerling has called the world's largest concentration camp. These people that committed the atrocities on October the 7th were born and grew up in the world's largest concentration camps where repeatedly they've been massacred and deprived and oppressed. And none of this justifies it again, but I'm telling you, if we're going to move forward on this, we have to be able to understand not just our own emotional reactions, but also the emotions and the circumstances that fuel those emotions of the other side.
Thanks, Dad. I